Alright, so we got a trailer, a showcase, and of course a demo that everyone is gushing over. After watching the trailer, I have a handful of questions that come to top of mind immediately, but I've also been working on my bingo card, and that's pretty much done, although the trailer did actually check off some boxes, so I kind of had to readjust it a little bit, but I don't want to talk about that yet. We'll get there later. First, let's talk about the demo. The demo seems to be chapter 1 of the game, and I spent about 2 hours here because, well, I just really wanted to enjoy it. And this demo feels very similar to Remake, actually. It's very linear and very straightforward. This works as a tutorial, and you see a much more upbeat Cloud getting the rust off, and this game teaches you the basics. I honestly haven't played Remake in a while, so it was kind of nice to have to re-remember how the game mechanics work, and this tutorial does a good job of getting you up to speed on dodging, attacking, and switching stances, eventually leading to your team synergy techniques with your teammate Sephiroth. It does feel a little bit mashy right now, but once we get into it and become more accustomed to the feel of it, it can get more in depth. There's tons of people who are grinding, doing weird, crazy tricks right now. You also get to jam out on the piano at Tifa's house, although you don't get much of a reward if you get a star on it. Story-wise, this demo is Cloud's flashback to the events at Nibelheim. Pretty much where we all expected the first chapter would end up being. This is Cloud telling the party how he went home on this mission with Sephiroth, leading ultimately to Sephiroth learning the truth about his origins, and him taking his pure turn into becoming a villain, as fire scene at the end. This is also sprinkled with some interjection from the party members, asking various questions, or sometimes humorously, like when you go sniffing around Tifa's closet.
You went through my stuff?
I know I shouldn't have.
Cloud! You asshole!
The story, I feel, definitely did a better job of trying to highlight the mythos of materia at one point, as well as pointing out that Mako is bad and indeed poison. These are things that we already kind of knew, but I think it just does a good job of reiterating them. It also has some very small, interesting details in the dialogue and clues if you're actually looking for them. For example, there's some moments of dialogue with one of the troopers that can be pretty interesting for one scene in particular. Now, of course, I do have some complaints. Again, the turn of Sephiroth into a villain still very does much feel left field to me, which has always been kind of one of my gripes overall. But when Sephiroth is attacking the village, the farmers with shotguns don't actually attack him, even when he is slowly just walking around killing people. And I know shooting Sephiroth with a shotgun probably won't do anything in the grand scheme of things, but it just does feel odd, but the story is told from Cloud's perspective, so take that for what it's worth. Also, mechanically, the traversal with the jumping around on different platforms does kind of feel a little janky at times, and there's a lot of climbing sections, and thank God the yellow paint fairy's here to let us know where we need to climb to. Also, there's some very slow walking points in the story, which I think a lot of people are complaining about, and yeah, they're just overly done. I get it's trying to be dramatic here, but it was just a little too much on the nose. Also, the environment overall is kind of static. It doesn't feel too full of life. I mean, there's a couple little boxes and things you can interact with, but I don't know, maybe I'm just being a little pedantic here. Also, the models do kind of look off. It is a demo, so these aren't really the final ones, at least that's what I'm seeing from some various sources, but well, we'll see soon enough how the true models actually look. Overall though, it is pretty fun, and it's free, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to just check it out anyway. I definitely enjoyed my time with it, and I'm not going to say it's flawless, but it's pretty damn good. Most of the juicier stuff to me though was from the trailer, and this is again raising a lot of questions with me. And personally, I wouldn't say the trailer was too spoilery. I think it's more teases than anything, but some people are definitely extreme when it comes to these type of things, so maybe it is better to go kind of dark on this if you're trying to avoid anything, but I do want to talk about a key few things that stood out to me in these trailers. The first thing is, who did Cloud stab here? I mean, it's pretty clear he gets manipulated by Sephiroth in anger, something I've said we'll most likely see happening more often in this game, and he definitely killed or grievously wounded someone here. I doubt it's a party member like Tifa, although it does seem to take place in that same area, but I have a feeling it's probably just going to be a random numbered soldier that's taking the form of Sephiroth or Jenova at this point and be a mid-boss fight or something like that. It could also be a new side character, maybe someone like Cissnei, so that way they can introduce her into the story and then quickly get her out. But that does seem like it would be a little bit extreme. Speaking of Cissnei, she's back. Although, I'm not really sure she has enough belts. I'm curious of what her role's gonna be. I'm guessing she's probably gonna be the one that breaks the truth about Zack overall to the group, telling us who he is, what his relationship is to Cloud, and, well, her. I feel like a lot of these elements were always going to be pushed forward, but they needed a catalyst to do so. So I think Cisne is going to be now that catalyst instead. And having her do this would just be a logical fit in my opinion. We also see the famous cloaked mystery man again in this trailer, who we now know is an emissary of Wutai. And he's actually getting an audience with the president of Shinra himself. This could be a new character, but I am still leaning more to the idea that this is Glenn. I would say, if we wanted to get wild, that it could be a deep ground version of Sonon and Hojo's trying to pull off a plan, but I really don't think that's the case because, quite frankly, the guy just looks way differently than what Sonon did, and it just leans more towards Glenn physically, in my opinion. We also see another little scene of these baby little weapons swimming along. Maybe they grow up into the big ones we see, and they get released in a small version and feed on some Mako and Cloverfield themselves into kaijus, but I kind of think they're just something new altogether. The old ones we saw were in the original frozen into earth and erupted, and we've been seeing posters and demos and trailers about the ruby red mountains and the emerald sea, and it really just makes sense and would be visually amazing to see them erupt from these giant mountain ranges, since they are basically giant mountainous enemies. So I feel like these little guys are something new entirely, so it'll be interesting to see how they play out. Maybe they're even little pilots that crawl into Ruby or Emerald and kind of take control, so we fight the big thing and this little thing falls out and we fight that. Just a wild guess. The trailer also showcases the white and black materia, as well as the corrupted or false life stream that Sephiroth has been trying to make for a while now. So it'll be interesting to see how these elements play out a little bit more and how they get expanded upon. I'm sure there's a lot of other questions and things I missed that I'm not raising right now, so let me know if there's anything you saw in the trailer that's definitely sparking your interest and what you're thinking about these things. The game also shows us a ton of new systems, like the Folio system, which is how we get our team-up moves and synergies, as well as some other stats it looks like, and it seems like a sphere grid almost from Final Fantasy X. Yeah, this is an exciting new thing to look at. We also see what looks very similar to Fort Condor gameplay, but this is going to be used for this proto-relic stuff that we don't seem to have too much context for yet, but I'm glad this Fort Condor gameplay is back, because I thought it was super fun and it was something just way too good to be left out. And of course there are tons and tons of other minigames that we've seen, both old and new, and it's really exciting and fresh to see all these new things, and I have a feeling that I'm going to personally get sucked into Queen's Blood, and this stuff just overall looks really great, and I'm super excited to get kind of lost in them, but we got to focus on the main story. Now, the big creators were also able to finally share what they experienced at that special gameplay showcase they were all invited to, and this has led to some interesting discoveries. Some of them have talked about how there's a lot more historical ruins and following lost wisps to unique locations, but a clear message I did get was that there seems to be tons of stuff to do in this game. There may not be a lot of enemies on the map from what I understand, but every time you get a Chadley Tower, you get a handful of fun tasks to do, and there's all these Moogle little games that you can do, and shrines with deities that help you fight the summons, because by finding them, it makes the summons weaker, and there's all kinds of other quests, and they really just seem to be bringing this world to life overall. It's really fleshing out to be the world that we imagined in our heads when we played the original Final Fantasy VII. Now, we are getting a Junon demo later on. I don't think this is going to be the same demo that the creators played before. I think it's just going to be on a much smaller scale, but we'll see when that gets released. Moving forward though, I do still stand by most of the theories I set forth in my Sephiroth's Goals video. Nothing in these trailers have really changed how I feel, or I don't feel like anything really disputes it either. If anything, I could make some arguments that maybe they do strengthen these things, but I can talk about that a little bit more later. For now, my bingo card is about ready, even though I had to do some last minute adjustments. Now, this is my first time trying something like this, so it might not be the best, and I'm always open to criticism, and this is a mix of general thoughts and a few hard guesses that I think might happen, or even some things I may just selfishly want to see in the game. I also did work on this a little bit before the preview came out, so some of the boxes were already met and I had to alter them a little bit. Now, I threw these things in a random generator, and so they got placed all over. I didn't place them myself. I also tried to make it look pretty and kind of failed. So these are going to be my 25 things kind of in rapid fire. Heavy Tank Boss. I think he's going to show up in some weird way, even though he looks wild. Possibly even piloted by Palmer when we fight him on the airfield. Dine's story being 100% faithful. I think they might try to censor or change some of the events in his story. I want to see a Sid smoking reference at some point. It's a little selfish, but I just want to see it. I think Chocobo breeding is going to be a pain in the ass, especially to get the golden Chocobo. I think we're going to play as Zack at some point as his character model. I think when we see Hojo at Costa de la Sol, he's going to drop some major plot points on us. I think the ending will show a new corrupted world, similar to how in 15 when Noctis came out of his rest, he had a whole dark world. Aerith dies, that one's pretty straightforward. Cloud is manipulated to use the black materia. ultimately to merge realities. Genesis shows up at some point. Glenn and the First Soldier are brought up. Bugenhagen references the idea of an alternate life stream or timeline. Chaos and Omega, more specifically Omega, are referenced at some point. Cloud mentally breaks or is controlled far more often and has to get help from Tifa in this game. Zack lore gets dumped way sooner, most likely through Cisne. Vincent gives us way more deep ground lore. Vincent will get a badass crazy cutscene. We will fight or encounter a deep ground member at some point. If we do fight Genesis, I'm not going to count him on this. I'm leaning more towards if it's a corrupted Sonon. Sid isn't really as kind as the trailer's making it out to be. I really want to see that Sid old man energy. It seems like we do fight Roche, so I kind of changed this to we start seeing Roche have degradation. Now, this might be a low number, but we see at least 5 glitches in the game. And now maybe this one's too high, but I want to have moments where I feel like I might cry at least 10 times. Now, this is one of the ones I had to change and modify a bit. Originally, I was going to say we get a reference to another game, but in the trailer, we already saw Gilgamesh, which is kind of a reference to Final Fantasy VI. So I'm going to change this to there's a reference outside of Final Fantasy that's made. And this is another one and it's sort of half-checked already, but there's going to be a more focus on the planet history, past hero, and their importance, and there's going to be new lore around it. From watching some of the content creators who got to experience the full demo, this already seems to be happening as they find a lot of ancient ruins and they talk about an ancient empire and everything, so kind of half-checked, but we'll give it a full check if it definitely doubles down on these things. So yeah, I might be going a little easy on myself here. I definitely see a couple ways I can probably get it. Maybe I didn't add enough fun ones to this, but it is my first try, so let's live and learn with testing this out. Now, as I kind of mentioned before, I'm still standing by a lot of my recent theories on Sephiroth that you can check out in this other video. The ending scene, I feel, really seems like it's what I predicted, and it's going to be the merging of worlds and life streams together, creating a broke, false world. And honestly, there's a few moments in the trailer that I think kind of show my idea of Sephiroth being able to control fate and time and travel wherever he wants to change things. I mean, we see him outside of the church with Zack. There's an intro cutscene where he's there, but we already kind of knew that from the remake anyway. And there's also a scene that you get from defeating the Midgar Soma that's really interesting. So if anything, I have some arguments that kind of strengthen my previous thoughts, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here yet. Also, I'm still retaining my ideas that we're going to see a lot more history, events, and important areas of the world because they really want to showcase what the world should look like. So when Aerith goes and fixes things in the third game, it's more impactful. And also when we see a dark, corrupted world, we get to see the difference of what the world was to what it is now after Sephiroth has changed things to how he views they should be. But I would love to be wrong and see something much better than anything I could possibly conceive. I would also love if you hit that like and subscribe button if you liked what you saw. Let me know what you think, let me know where I'm off, and as always, put that in the comments below. I am planning on taking a lot of time with this game when it drops, so it could be a little while before I do get my final thoughts and bingo card results out. But as always, drive fast, take chances, later nerds.
I'm waiting, Cloud.